Hello everyone, and peace be with you. I hope you're doing well. It's me, Sammy, again with another discussion. So last we started with the section titled Qur'an, Created or Eternal. One can also call that Qur'an created or uncreated. So as that which is uncreated would be eternal. So we went over how this was a debate between Muslims for a long time, or a debate between. We saw that it was a debate that was very heated, and it was it led to what you can say in Arabic is called a fitna. Fitna meaning an issue, a problem between people in this context. Fitna could mean trial, tribulation, or a problem between people. So this debate was, according to the text, was found its way more so in the writings of philosophers and theologians. By the way, I would like to say something. Philosophy and ilmul kalam, I've learned more and more in my life. I'm not a proponent, I'm not a fan of philosophy and ilmul kalam. Why? I find these sciences to be ones which could lead a human being to insanity. How? Because this kind of thinking, it can cause a person to over-question realities in life. You start over-questioning things. You start to look at things in such a way that they're not supposed to be looked at. Next thing you know, a person is going to start questioning aspects of God that should not be questioned. You're going to find people so with the Mu'tazila, for example, Mu'tazila didn't start off as people who were philosophers. A lot of people say they were not philosophers, but I view them as philosophers. They were philosophers. People say, no, they were people that wanted to defend, and one might say, well, Sammy, you were claiming to be a Mu'tazili. Well, yeah, as far as the basic principles, I agree with them. I agree with the basic principles. But as far as, but going into later folks such as Al-Jahid and if it's Abu al-Qasim al-Balkhi and such people, this is when you go farther down the line, you start running into things that just seem to be on a tangent. When you read the subjects, now when you go over to the Zaydiyah or to the Ibadiyah even, but let's talk about the Zaydiyah. When you go to them, there's a lot more balance involved. Ahlul Bayt, the family, the progeny of the Prophet, at least the early ones, were not focusing on philosophy. They were not focusing on philosophies or, talking about, why this is up and this is down and why this down can never be up. They were not writing entire books about why up is up and down is down. These kinds of books that talk about philosophy and that this, what that is? It's a distraction, because what's going to happen is the person who's obsessed with these topics is going to delve so deep into these books, which are hundreds of pages long, and Qur'an put to the side, the prophetic tradition put to the side. Anything that has to do with spirituality, you never know, he might be questioning it. This is what happens. It's dangerous. The Salaf did not do this. But you will find that the 12er Shia got lost in that. They got lost in philosophy and tasawwuf. They don't call it tasawwuf though, they call it irfan. They call it Gnosticism. So people like Khomeini and Baqir al-Sadr and others, they were interested in this. Bahjat, I'm not going to call them by titles because I don't respect these people. So So Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr was, good man, but at the same time, it's just these people have different beliefs. I don't respect them because of how they, because they mislead people. So I don't respect someone who misleads people. If you go and read Imam Zayd's book, it will encourage you to talk the way I'm talking right now. Not Imam Zayd's book, but rather the text that I showed in the last discussion, that the sincere friend of the Qur'an, the collected letters and speeches of Zayd ibn Ali. So peace be upon him and his father. So this is my view of philosophy. Ilm al-Kalam is on the line of philosophy. It's on the way of philosophy. There's nothing wrong with using logic to defend the deen, the religion, but when it hits a certain point, I notice it leads to something that has nothing to do with the Qur'an. Nothing to do with the Qur'an. Because the Qur'an is something which is made for all people. It's simple. It's enjoyable. It brings relaxation. That philosophy and ilm al-kalam brings complication. Those people who excel at it, to them it's a joy. But at the same time, it causes them to say things and to think in certain ways that a person of God shouldn't be thinking. Because you'll find a lot of these kinds of people, to be fair, to be honest, a lot of them you'll find they don't have beards, they don't have big beards, they want to be almost secular in a way. I know people who are secular. I know people who are secular, who are non-Muslim, and they're very good people, better than many Muslims I know. But when you are someone who adheres to the religion of Islam, yet you're trying to be secular through that method, that's stupidity. It's idiocy. Because you want to appear different. You want to appear like the modern philosopher. That's not Islam. If you were to see in front of your face the early Muslims, be they Wasil ibn Ata, the founder of the first, if you want to call him the head of the Mu'tazila, Wasil ibn Ata, you'll see him with a big beard, more than likely. If you want to see his teachers that he's attributed to, this Abu Hashim, I believe his name was Abdullah ibn Muhammad, Abu Hashim Abdullah ibn Muhammad ibn al-Hanafiyyah. I could be wrong, but you'll find them the way they appear, the way they spoke, you'll find them to question your philosophical or kalami type ways of doing things. It's okay to defend Islam with logic. Someone might say, well, Nahj al-Balagha is it's Imam Ali's words, and it talks about metaphysics and this and that. I will tell you this: Nahj al-Balagha has no chain of narration. There's no chain. It's a book without chain. A man by the name of, I believe, Sayyid al-Radi, who's a descendant of Imam Nasr al-Utrush, may Allah have mercy on him and bless him. He just found things attributed to Imam Ali and wrote them down. How do you know that it wasn't people who attributed words to Imam Ali and said that they're attributed to Imam Ali? You're going to tell me that Imam Ali, peace and blessings be upon him, was a philosopher amongst all the Sahaba around him who were not? How does that make any sense? Look at the contemporaries. Well, that was Imam Ali. He was different. How? Even the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, the Prophet himself, he doesn't speak the way Imam Ali speaks in Nahj al-Balagha. Have you guys not noticed that? That the Prophet, peace be upon him, narrations attributed to the Prophet, peace be upon him, the Prophet, are not like that. And this is why a person should be careful not to say that Imam Ali is an Imam and that the Prophet is a Prophet, but in reality he treats Imam Ali as if he's the Prophet. This is dangerous. Now an ignorant Shia would say, oh, this person who's speaking is a Nasibi. No, I'm not a Nasibi. But you will find that narrations that go back to the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, do not sound anything like, in many cases, like what is in Nahj al-Balagha. That's most likely because Nahj al-Balagha, likely, I haven't read the whole of it, but it's very likely that there are narrations that were injected there that came from people that might have loved Imam Ali, but wanted to attribute words to him that they were the ones who said and not him, or some knowledgeable guy. So what? Not knowledgeable guy, but someone who said something beautifully. They wanted to attribute it to Imam Ali. So they did that. The same way how when we were 12er Shia, they used to tell us that this Umar ibn al-Khattab, he came up with praying in qabd, even though there are many narrations attributed to the Prophet that say he prayed in qabd. This is qabd. So I know there are differences. Some say this, some say that. I get it, but they said that Umar is the one who brought that into the picture. Why? Because the Romans or the Persians, there are two, I believe. So the Romans or the Persians, to show humbleness, they would do this, to be humble, to show humbleness. So Umar said we should do this in the prayer. So they innovated it. So it's something similar when you have a word that's attributed to Imam Ali and someone in history says, oh, these words are beautiful. We should attribute this to Imam Ali. Someone who doesn't fear God, but he loves Imam Ali somehow. He doesn't fear God, but he loves Imam Ali, might attribute things to Imam Ali. Yeah, the words sound nice, but look at the context. Did other Sahaba talk the way Imam Ali did? One might not find that to be the case. Did the Prophet himself, peace and blessings be upon him, speak that way? Do we have anything attributed to the Prophet? When I'm talking about those texts that are very sophisticated and complex, when you're like, wait a second, did people talk like this back then? It seems to me like this was from a century or two, maybe more later, because it's possible that it was. Okay. So, we spoke last time about the speech of God and the philosophers or the Qur'an being created or uncreated. Philosophers and theologians were the ones writing about this. You didn't find this to be subjects in books of exegesis of Qur'an or prophetic narrations. We mentioned that Qur'an is speech of God. That's what the Qur'an is. It's speech that consists of letters and words recited by the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, and it was narrated from him through mass transmitted channels, tawatur, through chains that are tawatur, with mass transmitted chains, and then it reached us. Simple. This is what Qur'an is. Okay. We said that we spoke about the intellectual proofs. Two were brought up, two intellectual proofs to prove that the Qur'an is not eternal. It's a creation of God. First, the nature of eternality excludes certain characteristics. So nothing existed alongside Allah. Nothing exists alongside God. That would contradict the oneness of God, because nothing can share one of his essential attributes. So God, God being an essence, nothing can share an attribute of God which is essential, in that it's part of what makes God God. That's what makes God who God is. The essence is what it is. The existence is that it is. That it exists. So in any case, it would contradict Tawheed, monotheism, divine oneness. Second, that which is eternal, its existence is necessary, meaning that without people, this world can still go on. The universe can continue without people, the existence of people. But without God, nothing can go on. Without the Qur'an, the world can still go on. The universe can continue. God can take the Qur'an away and nothing would happen. In that, you wouldn't see phenomena such as trees being literally uprooted, or being, just somehow getting pulled out of the ground, and the sky falling and stars falling. These things wouldn't happen. If God willed, he can remove the Qur'an from the planet, nothing would happen. But God is a necessary existence, meaning that his existence is without, if there's no God, you have a problem. You will have a problem. There cannot be anything without God. However, without other created objects, without this without this phone, without this car, without nothing would happen. Maybe my life would change in a way, but nothing major would happen. So it's not creations are not wajibul wujud. Wajibul wujud meaning obligatory to exist, necessary to exist. Okay? So today we're going to go over the textual proofs that the Qur'an was created. And that's where we'll start now. Before anything, I begin in the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful. I praise and I glorify him as he ought to be praised and glorified. Let's begin. Regarding the textual proofs that the Qur'an was created, they are many. First, in the Qur'an, any verse that mentioned that God created everything. So any verse that mentioned that God created everything, like Qur'an 6:102, 13:16, 33:62, 40:62, serves as a proof for the creation of the Qur'an. This is because God created everything other than himself. If the Qur'an is other than God, it was created. If it's other than God, it was created. Second, God the Exalted says, no reminder comes to them existent. No reminder comes to them existent from their Lord. What that means, so I'll go to the verse. The existent is brought into existence by the originator, but let me give a more clear, because I think that when someone reads this, it might appear at first glance or even second glance as no reminder comes to them existent from their Lord, as if there's no reminder that comes to them that exists. But if we go to the verse, which is Al-Anbiya, so it was 322, page 322 in this Qur'an. They used to say, I think I've heard, Sunnis, certain Sunnis, not all of them, used to think that the Shia have their own Qur'an. It's something, I don't know where they got that from. Anyway, so what God says is, I'll read it in Arabic. So and then translate. ما يأتيهم من ذكر من ربهم محدث إلا استمعوه وهم يلعبون. So what comes to them of a reminder from their Lord that exists, nothing comes to them. ما يأتيهم من ذكر من ربهم محدث إلا استمع. Okay, nothing comes to them from the reminder of their Lord, which is existent, except that they heard it, or that they hear it, and they only play. وهم يلعبون, and they play. So, what is meant is that nothing comes to them of a reminder from their Lord that is existent. من ربهم محدث. Muhdath means something that is existent, something that comes into existence. Nothing comes to them from the reminder of their Lord, meaning the Qur'an, from the reminder from their Lord, which is existent, except that they hear it and they play. This has two proofs in it, this verse. One, the Qur'an is existent, but it came into, the Lord is mentioned, God is the Lord in the Qur'an, and then the Qur'an is the remembrance, the reminder, which is existent, which is muhdath. The term muhdath is used. Muhdath means something which comes into being. Muhdith is the one who brings it into being, which is God. So, that's the one point. The other point, which is not mentioned in the book, is that they hear it. It's audible, and we went over that in the last discussion. So, we mentioned the verse. It's Qur'an 21:2, Surah Al-Anbiya, the prophets, verse 2. The existent is brought into existence by an originator, muhdith, and is distinct from that which is pre-eternal, qadim, meaning pre-eternal. The term existent, muhdath, is the derivation of the word for in-time creation, huduth, a creation which happens in time. In time, all creation happens in time. God can create anything, but God created time itself. He created the sky, He created the earth, everything was created within 6 days. It was created within a time even. How long those days were, what defines a day, well, that's if that's subject to interpretation, let it be so. But it's still time. So in time creation, in time creation, huduth. The word existent cannot mean anything other than something brought into existence. There is no doubt that the reminder refers to the Qur'an, because the Exalted says, verily, it is a reminder for you and your people. Qur'an 43:44. And verily, we have revealed the reminder. Qur'an 15:9. Third, the Exalted says, we have made, ja'alnahu, we have made it an Arabic Qur'an so that you will understand. We have made it an Arabic Qur'an so that you will understand. Ja'alnahu means we made it. 43:3. The term made can either denote creating or changing the state of something to another state. Regarding the meaning of creating, God says He made ja'ala, the darkness and light. He made the darkness and light. Qur'an 6:1. Regarding the meaning of changing the state of something, the Exalted says, verily, I will make ja'ala, I will make you a leader for the people. Qur'an 2:124. Both meanings of make cannot refer to anything eternal, because the first meaning is the opposite of eternal, and the second meaning, i.e. the changing of states, cannot refer to anything but creation, because something that is eternal cannot change states due to its being timeless. Anything that changes from one thing, from state to state, if it changes from being this to that, it means that it was something before and it was something after. There is a before and after. Before, my ear was like this at this time. Now I went like that. So before, earlier, a few seconds ago, I folded my ear forward and then I let it go back to the way it was. This indicates that this is a change. Something happened that changed something. So, but it indicates a when and a where. A change indicates time. Okay, a change indicates time. It cannot be without time. It has to have time. Because if it was without time, we wouldn't be using the words before and after. We wouldn't ask the question when. Because if there's no time, where there's no time, there is no when. And where there's no place, there is no where. Where there is no place, as in, if there is no place, in the case that there is no place, there is no where. The question where does not exist. Fourth, the Exalted says, God the Exalted says, the month of Ramadan in which the Qur'an was revealed. 2:185. The proof in this is twofold. One, the Qur'an was said to be revealed during a certain period of time. That which is enclosed in time is created and cannot be eternal. Ramadan, that's a time. It's a period in time of a 12-month year. It's a month in a 12-month year. Two, the Arabic word for revealed, nazala, literally means to send down from one place to another. I think nazala might mean that, but it also means to descend. Nazala also means to descend. I think anzala means to, anzala with the in the beginning. That means, well, no, that means to, yeah, that means to cause to send down. Anzala is the active voice. Active meaning to cause, to be the cause of something else's, to be the doer of an action, not the receiver of that action. Passive is the receiver of that action. So in any case, nazala still means that it descended. As the Exalted says, we do not send down, nunazzilu, the angels except in truth. Qur'an 15:8. This implies space, and that which is enclosed in space is created and cannot be eternal. Fifth, the Exalted says, and when they would not let themselves be guided by it, i.e. the Qur'an, they say, this is an ancient qadim lie. This is an ancient lie. Qadim could mean ancient, old, eternal. They say this is an ancient lie. If you were to say, well, what if qadim means eternal in this case? It can't, because it's referring to the Qur'an, and the Qur'an, God is saying, and when they would not let themselves be guided by it, the Qur'an, they say this is an ancient lie. So this is an infinite lie. This is an eternal lie. It just doesn't work. It cannot. This is an eternal lie, or this is an ancient lie. They meant this is an ancient lie, likely meaning that this is just one of these old stories, perhaps. One of these it's just an old. It's not real, you know. Like what if I'm not mistaken, like what the polytheists used to say, if I'm not mistaken, meaning that if this can be compared to what the polytheists used to say, that this is asatirul awwaleen. These are just the stories of people of old. They don't carry any value, any weight. They used to belittle the words of God and call them old stories that are old, like old tales, old stories that are just told, things that are just told from one person to another, but they don't carry any meaning. So something similar. This is an old lie. Not this is an eternal lie. That wouldn't make any sense. Before this, and then before this, i.e. the Qur'an, was the book of Moses. So Qur'an 46:11-12. So following that verse which mentions this is an ancient lie is what says before this, meaning the Qur'an, before this was the book of Moses. So again, how can something come before that which is eternal? How can there be something that comes before what's eternal? What's eternal, nothing comes before it, nothing comes after it. That's what makes it eternal. The implication of the verse indicates that something, i.e. the book of Moses, existed before the Qur'an. Therefore, the Qur'an cannot be pre-existent. How much more evidence do they need? Do they want? They might say, oh, we didn't ask for it. Well, we're giving it to you anyway. If you're watching this, you're listening to it. Sixth, the Exalted says, this is a book whose verses are established, uhkimat, and then detailed, fussilat, meaning detailed, from one who is all wise and all aware. Qur'an 11:1. The argument from this verse is that the Qur'an is said to be established and detailed, both of which denote an action performed upon it. This implies that an actor, fa'il, an actor, preceded the action. Consequently, this indicates nothing other than the book was created. Furthermore, both verbs are in the passive tense, majhul, which denotes an action that was done by a doer. So something was done to the Qur'an. Also of interest is that the word then, thumma means then is used, which indicates sequence. Nothing eternal can be affected by sequence, because the effect of time only applies to that within time. Hadath, and therefore created. Hadath, it's within time, and therefore it's created. So nothing can be done to something that is eternal. There is something that came before it. In this case, God came before the Qur'an and He did something to it. He preceded the action that was done to the Qur'an, which He did. Therefore, the Qur'an is created. And then nothing eternal can be in a sequence. You cannot have something eternal being first, second, third, fourth. It doesn't work that way. There is no sequence. There is no 3 comes before 4 and 1 before. It doesn't exist. If you want that to exist, there's that song, on the first day of Christmas, on the second day of Christmas, and a partridge in a pear tree. I'm just saying, this. It does not apply to what is eternal. And I advise myself and I teach myself before anyone else. Meaning I'm talking to me first. The man in the mirror. Don't sing that Christmas song. Not because music is haram. I don't believe music is haram, but because it's the Christmas that when they speak about Christmas, the Christians, they're talking about God being born. So may God forgive me for using that as an example. Because when the Christians talk about Christmas, we have no issue with celebrating the birthday of Jesus. There's nothing wrong with it. I know there are those who debate the date which He was born. That's not the issue in my view. The issue is, because you could celebrate, you could pick any day. If you don't know, just pick a day and say, this day we're just gonna, just for the sake of Jesus. Nothing wrong with that. Just like there's nothing wrong with Mawlid. Mawlid, we know the day. Mawlid al-Nabawi, the Prophet Muhammad's birthday. But the thing is that when the Christians say these days, these Christians, the majority, when they say that Jesus was born, a lot of them, maybe not all of them, but a lot of them believe that God was born, because they believe Jesus is God. So most of them would believe this because they believe that Jesus is God. Especially the Coptics. They believe that Jesus is God. He is both the human and the divine. There are those who believe in that Jesus is the human and God is the divine. But they are in the Trinity, they're one, if I'm not mistaken. Those are, I think, called Diaphysites. And then the Monophysites, who are like the Copts, you find them in Egypt, Eritrea, Ethiopia. These ones say, and other places too in the Middle East, they believe that that Jesus, that the boy that was born, that is God Himself. He's both the human and the divine. Okay. 7th. The Exalted says, He is the one who has revealed the book to you. In it are decisive verses. They are the basis of the book. Others are figurative verses. Qur'an 3:7. God mentioned that the verses of Qur'an are divided into 2 types of verses. Something that is eternal cannot be divided. Something eternal cannot be divided. Only something that has a beginning and end can be divided. Why? Because something eternal, if you divide it, what happens is that if something is done unto something eternal, again, it's change. It indicates sequence. And that which is which involves sequence is not bound by time or space. There is no that which is you cannot say there is before and after, because there is no before and after in a timeless in a timeless setting. You cannot have before and after. It's not even really a setting, because there's no place. So when I say timeless setting, even when I say that, I mean that when something is timeless, nothing can happen to it, because it is timeless, because it exists where this does not happen. This is one of the reasons that makes God worthy of worship. Eighth, the Exalted says, but this is an honored Qur'an on a preserved tablet. 85, Qur'an 85, 20 to 21. The argument from this verse is that the Qur'an is said to be on a preserved tablet. There is no doubt that the preserved tablet is created. Otherwise, one would be forced to affirm that it is eternal alongside God. Nothing eternal could exist on or in something created, as proved earlier. Just like when God spoke the Torah to Moses, they were, or rather, he wrote God wrote, not literally, God wrote the words of the Torah on the alwah, the tablets. Those tablets were of created material. They're created. How can something uncreated be upon something which is how can something uncreated be upon something which is created? Unless you believe that those tablets were not created, which no one would dare. Ninth, regarding the prophetic narrations, hadiths, the prophetic narrations, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him and his progeny, is recorded to have said in a well-known narration that Surah Al-Ikhlas is Surah 112. The Qur'an is 114 chapters. This is chapter 112. Surah Al-Ikhlas is equal to 1/3 of the Qur'an. Something eternal cannot be divided into halves, thirds, fourths, or so forth. Something that can be divided possesses boundaries. That which possesses boundaries is limited, and that which is limited is created. So if something has boundaries, I have boundaries, do I not? There are boundaries around me, some type of boundary. Between me and this door, you guys can't see it, there's a boundary. Between me and the airplane, there's some boundary. That is a limitation between me and that plane flying overhead. So that which possesses boundaries, such as myself, is limited, and that which is limited is not eternal. It's created. It's a created thing because it has limits. So if the Qur'an is equal, if Surah Al-Ikhlas is equal to 1/3 of the Qur'an, and you're saying that the Qur'an is 1/3, thirds, fourths, fifths, etc., then you have just said that it can be divided in some way. Something that can be divided. If you say that the Qur'an is divided in the book itself, well, what about Surah Al-Ikhlas being divided before it was revealed? Meaning that it has its value of being worth 1/3 of the Qur'an. Then still it cannot be divided. That which is divided is limited. 10th, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him and his progeny, stated that Surah Yasin, Qur'an 36, chapter 36, is the heart of the Qur'an. Obviously, the term heart is allegory. However, by affirming that it is the heart of the Qur'an, he, peace and blessings be upon him and his progeny, highlights that it holds a special position in relation to other chapters and verses of the Qur'an. It holds a special position in relation to other chapters and verses of the Qur'an. One part of something eternal cannot hold a special position over another part. One part of something eternal cannot hold a special position of another part. Again, we're talking about parts. That which has parts is limited. Why? I'll give you an example that the book, in my understanding, does not give. If something is in parts, again, so how we believe that God exists without a place and he exists without a body. If someone comes to you and tells you that this eternal thing, this limitless thing, this limitless eternal being, okay, is divided into parts. Another person says, I believe in an eternal being, but it's not divided into parts. Which one is more powerful? The one divided into parts, into pieces? Parts are pieces. Or the one which is undivided? Of course, the one which is undivided. The one with parts becomes limited. What was I trying to think of? One part of something eternal cannot hold a special position over another part. It doesn't work that way. 11th, similarly, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, and his progeny said, everything has a high point. Everything has a high point. And the high point of the Qur'an is Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter 2, Qur'an 2. This statement also emphasizes what was said previously. Something eternal cannot have a high point over another part of it. It cannot be one thing and then one thing in one area and not be something else in another area. Something eternal cannot be one thing in one area and not another thing in another area. What's eternal is infinite. What is infinite cannot be it cannot be broken. Do you know why? Because that which is infinite, and this is something I had to learn myself, okay? Of course, everything I had to learn. And just like you guys, just like anyone. That which is infinite is that which cannot be comprehended. We cannot assess it. I can assess this book, right? What do you mean you can assess this book? Well, I can tell you that this book, I can weigh it for you and tell you its weight. I can count its pages and tell you how many pages it has. I can describe it in that, okay, its pages are made of paper, not plastic. It's this is its barcode and this is what it says. I can tell you what it says. I can assess this book and I can figure out whether I can lift it, whether I can read it, whether I can do things with this book. Now, with that which is eternal, it's infinite. That which is infinite has no limit whatsoever. Not in any way. No limit to size, no limit to there is no space. It cannot occupy space, because if it occupies space, it would not be infinite. Infinite means forever, with no beginning, no end. It's infinite. Everything that you see in front of your face right now, the hat, the image on the hat, the sweater, the glasses, the book, this headrest, whatever you see, all of these are finite. All of them are limited in some way. They're limited by time, because this can be like this, and it can be like this, and it can be like this, and it can be like this. That hurt my ears because it's a trucker, so my ears got a little bit, anyway, scratched. This is subject to wear and tear. If it's not taken care of well, maybe even if it is taken care of well, it's subject to wear and tear. Time can have its effect on this thing. It's not infinite. Infinite means it's the same always. So it cannot be that what is infinite and what is eternal is broken up into parts, because that which is eternal has no boundary. There is no part that it stops and then starts again. Because what do parts mean? If it's infinite, it cannot be that, okay, this is one finger, right? And this is the other finger. No, I'm not going to give the other finger. May Allah protect and forgive us. This is one finger. This is another finger. Okay? This finger, yeah, mahalo. So, or Allah, isn't that what, if anyone's Hawaiian, please forgive me. I got it wrong. But anyway, but that's what they say, I think. My dad was in Hawaii, all right? My dad was in Hawaii, and he He spent a significant amount of time. He wanted me to be born there, in fact. So I became a California kid. Anyway, so the point is, guys, nothing wrong with smiling. So if you have this finger and you have this finger, this is one part of the hand and this is another part of the hand. This is limited. You cannot have something infinite and yet it has one part here and one part there. No, it's just infinite. It just is. It's boundless. This is not, because this is one boundary and this is another. This has its own boundaries and this has its own boundaries, and this hand itself has its boundaries between it and the wrist, between the wrist and the elbow. Right or wrong? That's why you cannot have parts. You cannot have a high part and then a low part. You can't have parts, period. But to add to it, you cannot have a high part or a lower part. You cannot have parts, period. But this is likely to further defend the argument. 10th. Sorry, not 10th. Not even 11th. 12th. 12th. In a well-known tradition, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, and his progeny mentioned that the verse of the celestial chair, Qur'an 2:255, is said to be the greatest verse of Surah Al-Baqarah. That verse 255 of chapter 2 is said to be the greatest verse of Surah Al-Baqarah. How can something eternal be divided into parts and one exceed the others? How can it be divided into parts and one exceed the others? You cannot say that it became divided, because that would indicate time, meaning that it would indicate a before and an after. And you cannot say that it was already divided by itself, because that would contradict that it's infinite. It cannot be that it's infinite if it's divided amongst itself. It cannot be. If it's already divided. Well, Sammy, what if it already was divided from the beginning? There is no beginning, but let's just say it was already divided. It cannot be, and at the same time be infinite, because a part of it being infinite is it doesn't lack anything, but it lacks what a finite thing would lack, which is parts. So it cannot be. And then if you were to say, you see, now I think I got it. I've been trying to figure this out before I gave this talk. The other thing is that I'm bringing this is not part of the text, but I'm bringing it up anyway, that it may help someone else understand, as I believe I have understood. Can there be two infinite beings coexisting? Let's just talk about the rule of eternality. Can two infinite beings, can they exist together? Two eternal, infinite, can they both exist together? The answer is no. Why? Because it cannot be that both of them are exactly the same and both be infinite. It cannot be. Why? Because this thing, the first eternal and / infinite, eternal, you want to call it eternal? Let's call it eternal. This eternal thing is eternal. It's not bound by anything. It's not bound by time, not even place. It's not bound by anything. This eternal being is not bound by anything. If the other eternal being exists, there would have to be, where would it, not, there would have to be, it has to be some kind of where. Because there would have to be a boundary. And if where there's a boundary, there is a where. Because in this place, there's a boundary. They cannot coexist. If something is boundless, like a field, just imagine a field that's boundless. No bounds. It's just forever. That's not the case. But if it helps to help you understand, it doesn't work. It does not work. Did you get that? Let's use the word infinite. Something infinite lacks nothing. It lacks nothing other than, except what a finite thing has. That's the only thing it lacks. What a finite thing has, like boundaries, limits, numbers like 2 eyes, 3 eyes, 5 eyes. There is no infinite number of eyes. Why? Because what's infinite? The being or its eyes? How can that thing be infinite while something else is technically competing with it? It cannot have a competitor because it's already infinite. It already has something that nothing else has. You get it? It's already without bounds. It's already without boundaries. It already has no limit. It already has, it already possesses everything. Everything it possesses. There's nothing that crosses its path. Nothing at all in any way. It cannot be that something else that's infinite crosses its path. If that was the case, then it would not be infinite. It would be finite. Finite. If you want to call it finite, it's finite. That's the word, the way it's pronounced. But that's what it would be. Okay? This is how it would work. Believe it or not, this topic bothered me for hours and hours. Some things, you know, they just... You ask a brother, you ask chat GPT, you try to figure it all out. You're like, oh, okay, I get it. Wait a second, I'm not getting it anymore. Oh, okay, I get it. I kind of don't get it anymore, though. Then I get it. Oh, okay, I get it. In conclusion to the proofs mentioned above, it is clear that the Qur'an is created. This is because one cannot readily apply what is said about it to something which is eternal. You cannot readily apply what is said about the Qur'an to something which is eternal. More so, it would be improper to say that same thing about one of God's essential attributes. For example, is it possible for God to say, "And we have made our power"? Or the month of Ramadan, because God's power is an essential attribute. That's part of his essence. Or the month, that's what makes God, God. Or the month of Ramadan in which our knowledge was sent down. So our knowledge was sent down in the month of Ramadan, meaning that in the month of Ramadan, in this time, that's when God's eternal knowledge was sent down. In this time, it was limited to a time. Unless the knowledge that is being referred to, just for the sake of, is referring to the Qur'an, if that's what it means. But in this case, the brothers and sisters, or brother and sister, I don't know if there's, let's just say the brothers and sisters are referring to the attribute of knowledge, God's knowledge. I believe that's what's being referred to here. The month of Ramadan in which our knowledge was sent down, or before our power was. Something. How can you say before our power was? Because that would indicate that there was a time God had no power. Before our power was something. That God's power either was not or it changed. And that only applies to that which is in time. Got it? Or before our existence was the book of Moses, God forbid. Or our will is on a preserved tablet, and so forth. Can that be said? No, it cannot be. Likewise, if one substitutes one of God's essential attributes in place of the Qur'an in the prophetic narrations, this would also lead to an abhorrent doctrine and faulty belief. The heart of God's power is, or the high point of God's knowledge is, and so forth. You cannot speak in such ways about that which is eternal. It just is. It's eternal. That's the point. It's infinite. It just is. It cannot have a high point or low point. No, it's absolute. It's infinite. It's eternal. Meaning that it's completely complete. It's complete. Got it? I hope it made sense. Okay, Let's read one more paragraph, and then it's taking us after that to those who hold to the eternality of the Qur'an. Because remember, we were going to bring our argument. I say our because it's my argument as well, and then the argument of those who defend that the Qur'an is eternal, who claim that the Qur'an is eternal, that it's uncreated. But that we'll talk about next time on the next discussion. So let's read this final paragraph here. Check this out. Listen to this. Regarding the Prophet's statement that Surah Al-Ikhlas is equal to 1/3 of the Qur'an, this means that the Qur'an can be divided into threes. If one was to affirm that eternality can be divided into three, just as the Qur'an can be divided into three, this would lend support to the Trinity doctrine of the Christians. So, regarding the Prophet's statement that Surah Al-Ikhlas is equal to 1/3 of the Qur'an, this means that the Qur'an can be divided into threes. That in itself is fine. If you say that Surah Al-Ikhlas is there's nothing wrong with that statement. Here's where the problem comes. If one was to affirm that eternality can be divided into three, just as the Qur'an can be divided into three, this would lend support to the Trinity doctrine of the Christians. For they believe that the eternal God is divided into three distinct persons. You see? If you say that something eternal, as the Qur'an, Ash'aris, Maturidis, Sunnis, Atharis, Hanbalis, whoever you are, Salafis, if you're listening, listen close to what you're believing in. You keep trying, every now and then, you try to refute us. The Jahmiyyah said this, and the Mu'tazila said this, and you don't ever say Zaydiyah, because the Zaydis to you, you think that they're like you, so you don't say anything about their creed. Even though the Zaydi creed is the same as the Mu'tazili creed. You don't say anything about the Zaydi creed. But when it comes to the Mu'tazila, you attack them. You attack the Mu'tazila. You don't say anything about the Zaydi creed because they're Shia who are close to you in your belief. I have no problem if I was someone who is Shi'i close to a Sunni. I have nothing wrong with that. But I do have a problem with that if the Sunni believes in something which is heretical. I still love him as a brother in humanity. I still care for him. I don't hate him. No. But his belief is faulty. So if you're listening to this, look at what you say. You say that the Qur'an is eternal, but I don't know how many of you understand what that even means. The Trinitarian Christians, the Christians say that God is three, and they say that he's eternal. For they believe that the eternal God is divided into three distinct persons. What would be the difference between affirming that God's eternal speech can be divided into three and God's eternal essence can be divided into three? What's the difference? You believed that God's essence is eternal. And you believed that the Qur'an is also eternal, co-eternal with God. Qadimun ma'allah. It's eternal with God. So if the essence of God is eternal and the Qur'an or the speech of God is also eternal, then you have declared that there is you have performed shirk, polytheism. You said it can be divided into three. If we go by that, if you accept that narration that the Qur'an is 1/3, you have said that it's divided that the Qur'an is divided into three. So you have your own Trinity. You said the Qur'an is divided into three. You have your own Trinity. So what would be the difference between affirming that God's eternal speech can be divided into three and God's eternal essence can be divided into three? What's the difference? You said that this is eternal and that's eternal. Both of them are eternal. But yet you can divide both of them into three. Nothing eternal can be divided. Nothing infinite can be divided. And this is another argument, if I'm not mistaken, that the Christians, they've divided God into three. The Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. We said they're not. They're divided, but we said they're absolutely divided. They said they're separate but one. How? Three eternal beings? If one came after the other, then they cannot be eternal because one came before the other. Or one came after the other, whichever one. After, before, still indicating lack of eternality, lack of infinity. Do you see what happened to our ummah? Do you see what happened to the Islamic nation? Do you see what has happened? Do you see how we've been infiltrated? If this part of what I'm saying is ilmul kalam, this I support. This I support. It's the more complex things that I don't support. But and if those more complex things are there to defend Islam, then I mean that's fine. But I don't think it's needed at this time. But this kind of argument is fair. This is balanced. Look at where look at what is the majority of the Islamic nation. The majority of the Islamic nation is following. This is the creed that's mentioned here. It's a corrupt creed. It's shirk. It's polytheism. Even if the person doesn't know, even if he doesn't know that that's what he's saying, that's what he's following. It's like saying someone is Hindu. He's not Muslim, right? He's Hindu. But he's a nice person. But he's not Muslim. He's still not Muslim. Now where he goes when he dies, we don't know. That's up to God to decide. But it all depends on his capacity, what he knew, what he didn't know. But same thing applies to those Muslims or those who say that they're Muslim but don't know that they're following shirk, polytheism. What would be the difference between affirming that God's eternal speech can be divided into three and God's eternal essence can be divided into three? Just as the Exalted advises the Christians to not say three regarding the eternal essence of God, we advise those who believe in the eternality of the Qur'an to not say three regarding the eternal essence of God's speech. If the Qur'an can be divided into three, as per the words of our Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him and his progeny, then the Qur'an is not eternal. If it can be divided into three. If you say it can be divided, it's in the book, it's divided. Well, what difference does it make? The Qur'an, you're saying that the Qur'an, the words of the Qur'an, what is being recited of the Qur'an, God's speech, the Qur'an specifically speaking, you said that if you believe in that narration about it, Surah Al-Ikhlas, which is Surah Qul Huwallahu Ahad, if you believe in that narration, then you're saying that the Qur'an is one of three. It's 1/3 because it's 1 out of 3. So there are 3 parts. If you don't believe in that, still the other arguments we used against your belief that are more than sufficient. Next time we're going to talk about the proofs that those who hold to the eternality, who believe in the eternality, what they say.